Or
Greetings and welcome to today's webinar entitled Effective IT Planning in Challenging Economic Conditions. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. A brief question and answer session will follow the formal presentation. Please submit your questions using the WebEx chat feature. Names and companies will remain anonymous. If anyone should require operator or technical assistance during the conference, please press *0 on your telephone keypad. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. It is now my pleasure to introduce your moderator, Mr. Uli Kalex. Thank you, Mr. Kalex. You may begin.
Thanks, Everett. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. This year is still rather fresh, and many of us have completed planning for 2009 only a few weeks ago. I'm sure that for quite a few it was a rather painful process. In light of the current economic situation, many are already going through a replanning and reprioritization process to align budgets with the topics that are most valuable to business, to reconsider the budget allocation, and to make sure that funds are spent wisely and efficiently, to identify the initiatives that can retain or help gaining competitive advantages. Our webinar today is going to focus on the process of IT planning and its importance to finding the right tunes and levers for a successful cruise in the economic weathers. I'm very happy to welcome two fellow colleagues from Forrester Research, Alex Cullen, VP and Research Director, and Tim DeGennaro, Senior Research Analysts, who are going to take the first part of the discussion today. With this, Alex, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Uli, and thank you all for joining us here in the webinar today. I'm actually trying to advance my slides, so just be patient with me. I'm very happy you could make it here today to the webinar. I'm going to be talking about IT planning in turbulent times, as Uli had mentioned, and recognizing that, of course, we are really in turbulent times right now. It's like, although we could all have confidence that our firms will, survive, come out the other end of the economic conditions right now, it's hard for us to look ahead over what's the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And that makes basically for a very big planning challenge for us. It's the uncertainty and the need to maybe adapt and change your plans often that becomes the big factor for that determines how successful or not you are with planning. And one of the things that we do say is in good times as well as in bad, IT planning is too important to fail or even just pass. Failing is a plan that does not make sense, that is not relevant to your business, that is not complete, that is wholly inaccurate. But even just passing is one where you maybe get a few things right, but you're really not able to provide the most value for the spend, provide the most clarity in terms of what benefits your firm, your organization will be getting for that spend. I'm going to take a look at this through actually 3 sections and some recommendations. I'm going to talk about what makes planning so difficult now. What's the big challenge there? And then Tim DeGennaro is going to come in. He's going to talk about it from the process perspective, and what about the processes that we have in place today make it very difficult to do a good job with. I'll come in and talk about what are those success factors that the CIO and the IT planning staff, they have it in place, they can succeed, and then give you some recommendations. And then I'll turn over to Uli after that. So with that, I'll get started in talking about planning in challenging times. As I said, we know these are challenging times, and one of the things we know is that challenging times demand agile planning. This is some very recent survey data that we have, which is where we've asked people, how is it affecting your organization's plans and budgets? And you see that half the people of the organizations have reduced their budgets from 2008, but a quarter, 25%, are still in that maybe thing. They have contingency plans and budgets. They're still expecting a lot of change, as well as a significant percentage, 24%, who are actually going, business as usual. Their course has been set, and they're doing that. both the people who are in the maybe category, they have contingency plans and budgets, invent their ask, and even those who have already reduced their budgets, they're in a situation where when conditions change, they will need to replan. They'll need to be planning on a different level of spend and a different amount of business demand for that. And in this environment, because IT is spending less, that means business demand that can't be met. That's demand for projects or for services or even for simple things like upgrades to your BlackBerry or something like that. Because there's business demand that can't be met, value communication has become even more critical for CIOs. And CIOs know this. This is, again, the same survey data. And one of the things that this particular chart shows is how CIOs' sense of priorities has changed from 2007, mid-year, to 2009 now. And the two things that I've circled here, improving IT value management and communications, and improving the transparency, the business of IT costs, business demand, and capacity, those are the things with the greatest increase. You can see how much they've jumped out in terms of priority. These have become top-of-mind priorities for CIOs because, if you're a CIO or a senior IT manager, you know that the need to communicate with clarity is even more critical now. And part of the reason for that is, we ask business execs about the role of technology in their business and then how well they perceive IT as supporting them in that. And business execs get technology. They know it's really important. They know it's core to their differentiation, central to products and services, and critical for their business success. And these are their critical business drivers, lowering the company's, and this is from this past summer, 2008 summer, lowering business overall operating costs, improving productivity. These are things you would expect more or less. And you can see IT support, where are they? They are on the fence. They're not satisfied. They're on the fence. They need more to convince them. So this is a big thing. This is a big backdrop. The backdrop is not just lowered budgets, but it's also business expectations and perceptions, and how well does IT understand those and communicate to those. And that's what sort of really brings in what we call the planning challenge. Basically, there's changing business assumptions. The IT plans, both what we call operating plans, usually the plan for the coming year, and strategic plans, the plans for the 3 or more year time horizon, they have to be easily adaptable to changing business assumptions. Because the assumptions will change. Businesses will come and say, we're now thinking of this. What can you do? What will the impact it mean? Your CFO will be saying, if we do this, what will it mean on your budget? And the second part of the challenge is, given greater business scrutiny, these plans have to really clearly connect business demand, the IT investments to meet that demand, and the business value received. It's not enough just to say, you have these priorities, we have these spending plans. They've got to clearly connect these things so the business understands what they're getting and how well you are supporting them. And these plans, finally, they have to be credible. It sounds obvious, but they have to be credible in the sense of budgets and deliverables linked to business priorities and the ability to sort of show the results for what you're getting. And so those are key things that make planning so challenging, because essentially the bar is high and the environment makes it very difficult. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Tim DeGennaro to talk about why IT planning is so difficult.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So from a process perspective, what is making IT planning so hard? Well, to start, this is a model that Forrester uses to describe demand, and really what it's showing is that the business creates various types of demand through everyday operations as well as in reaction to business changes. And at Forrester, we break this down into 3 different types of demand. There's the strategic demand, there's the tactical demand, like enhancements to applications or changes due to growth, and then there's operational demand, that everyday keep the lights on demand. And these separate types of demand are dealt with in different process silos. For instance, project portfolio management processes would handle the strategic demand, and application portfolio management deals more with the operational demand. And it's likely that each of these processes at a different level of maturity than another. And what ends up happening is that these process silos all work against each other over the same pool of resources and capacity. And it causes friction as there's conflict over the right commitments and the right priorities. So obstacle number one is reducing that friction by creating a plan that finds the right allocation of expenses and staff across those demands, which proves difficult given the separate process silos these demands have to go through. So then there's what IT has to then convincingly describe in its plan, and this is where it starts to get even more challenging. So IT has to be able to describe in business terms what we're going to deliver, what will be new and what will be a continuation of the services that we already provide, and then when this is happening. So a roadmap of when new capabilities will be available and a high-level outline of the whole program. And of course then how we're actually going to get this done in terms of allocation of funds and our human resources. Will the organization need to be reshaped? What new processes will we need, and what does the supporting architecture look like? So if I were to sum up the last two slides, the main theme is that IT has a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs that it has to deal with when planning. So obviously IT needs a process to handle this. And we think the process would look something like this. It would all start out with the business strategy, which would outline, what the business wants to achieve and how it plans to get there. And from that, IT can take those needs and figure out what we're already doing today to support that and where are the gaps that we need to fill. And those ideas become demand, which is combined with what we'll call business as usual demand, such as keeping applications running, your everyday demand. So IT then looks at all that demand in aggregate and decides on an approach to how it's going to tackle that demand. For example, that might require redesigning IT or consolidating or increasing outsourcing. And what IT gets is a budget to go forward with that approach. And typically about 30% of that budget goes to the new strategic investments and the remainder to what we'll call MOOS, which is our acronym for the spending to maintain and operate the organization, systems, and equipment. So IT can then make project and services commitments, which would be fed into the governance process to ensure that those are delivered upon. But as is the idea of this section, this is, of course, hindered by obstacles. The information that supports this process is, for the most part, in separate office files in different places. That first input, the business strategy, might be in PowerPoint presentations or Word documents. And these are files that are held by different people with different versions, different degrees of granularity. And then the list of IT's current capabilities might be somewhere in either a spreadsheet or document. Demand management might be done in a combination of multiple things, Excel spreadsheets or wherever a project backlog is maintained. The list of current ongoing IT initiatives might be captured across various tools, documents, maybe a PPM tool if you're lucky. And IT strategy might be then kept in a PDF or PowerPoint or Word. And the bottom line here is that there's no single record. That first, information needs to be chased down, needs to be digested, it needs to be normalized from too many sources. And that information is not in a format that can be easily combined and used together. And this is at the cost of accuracy and agility in planning. So opportunities for IT to be strategic are unclear, and IT has no time to ask, what if, and consider alternative plans. And what this amounts to is breakage. And as these problems with information start at the very beginning of the process, they only compound as we go further along. Just at the start, for example, that business strategy isn't always specific enough to really boil down into an actionable plan for IT. It may describe business goals and the missions, but not necessarily the methods by which it plans to achieve that strategy. So right then and there, IT and business lack the ability to identify those gaps between business strategy and IT's capabilities. And without that linkage, when IT looks at the various types of demand that's coming in, it has trouble identifying which demand is truly the strategic demand and what is just business as usual. So when it comes time to plan for that demand, IT is working with an incomplete picture of demand. So then the budgets that IT gets to meet that demand don't accurately reflect what demand IT will actually be working on and what it truly will be delivering. And the sum of all these parts is that feedback loop, that link between what IT commits to and what the business is trying to achieve, is weak. And business just doesn't see the value that IT wants to provide, and IT can't explain why it's doing what it's doing. And it leads to a very frustrating interaction between the two. So the results is that the business sees an alignment gap between what IT is doing and what the business needs them to be doing, that IT was unable to instill any value management into this process despite how important they know it is, and when IT can't really explain why things are going as they are, it only perpetuates the notion that IT is just late and slow. And then reality hits, and projects begin to slip. Suddenly planned projects no longer have a budget or resources to back them, and it amounts to wastage. And overall, IT's credibility as a reliable supplier and partner to business is damaged. And all of these challenges are faced during a time when IT planning is too important to fail or just pass, as we said before. So obviously, knowing how to succeed is imperative. And with that, I'll pass it back to Alex Cullen, who will give us some tips on how IT can be successful.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Yeah, it's as Tim said, it's despite all the difficulties, IT planning is too important to fail at or even just succeed. Be able to do a marginal, just pass, do a marginal job. So I want to talk about really what needs to be in place for IT to succeed at planning and succeed in the eyes of the businesses that it supports. Now, the first thing I'll do is, this is a slide I don't expect you to read, so I'll briefly summarize what it is. We had a discussion. We have a community program of CIOs. It's called the Forrester Leadership Board for CIOs. And we had a discussion with them last fall around the two forces, businesses wanting to take more control over technology on their own, this business expectation for technology, and combined with the fact that IT was anticipating an era of much tighter budgets to support the business. And we were discussing the fact that this could create an alignment gap by itself and result in IT being marginalized in the future, not in 2009, but in the long run, because business has a perception it can't deliver. And so we asked the CIOs there, okay, so share your insights on how to avoid this marginalization by the business. And the thing that they said, one of the key things they said is, you've got to formalize IT's role in the firm's overall planning process. That's one of the key things. In other words, IT has to have a defined role, a seat at the table, a value-added role in the firm, the business's planning process. And that's a very critical thing, because that's basically, it's not just for yourself you're planning for the firm overall. And this kind of leads into what's the result of a good planning process. Tim talked about the what, how, and when we'll do it. The budget and staffing and organization and process, as well as a roadmap and program outlines. And when you have a good planning process, you're answering these questions, but in a way that's clearly linked to the value being delivered. We are conducting these projects. They'll be available in this time because the business strategy says this, and this will be the business benefit from it. They will be greater customer retention, even though there's a lot more pressure on customer wallet share, things like that. Clearly linked. So when you're meeting with the business, you can explain that to them. It has to be comprehensive. It can't be only a piece of it. One of the big challenges that we often hear from CIOs is that they can easily justify parts of their budget. They can't explain other parts very well. They can't explain that moose. They can't explain where the money goes that goes into application maintenance requests. So it's got to be comprehensive because they're all going against the same resource pool. And finally, the plan has got to be validated against alternatives. If you are in a large dynamic organization, you present a plan, someone will say, well, I think it'd be better if you do it this way. And you need to be able to say with confidence, we've looked at all the different ways that we can support you. We think that this way is the best value for the spend you are making. Those are three key things that we think that you want to have as characteristics of your plans. Now, how do you get there? Well, here's some critical success factors. The first is I talked about in the beginning. This is what CIOs say. You have to have a defined role and process in business strategy and planning. It's got to be understood that when you meet with the business, you're not just there because you're thinking about IT. You're also there thinking about your impact on the business and a defined role. So you're expected to be a contributor and participant. You need to have an accurate understanding of current and planned IT capabilities because that is, in fact, one of the values you bring to that business planning process. This is what we can do today. This is what we have the capacity for. This is the best way to go about supporting your business strategy, being able to provide that value-added information. And because of that, you have to have a clear connection between the business strategy, what the business wants to achieve, and the IT capabilities to support it. We have this staff, we have these applications. This one is good, and this is bad. You need to have that clear connection there. You have to have a current and relevant IT strategy. Tough economic times are not an excuse to not have an IT strategy. An IT strategy, as Tim talks about, says basically the how you are going to get done all the things that your firm, your organization needs you to do. It's going to be how you balance the different types of requests, whether you're going to be doing a few big projects or lots of small ones, what you're going to do to make it so that you can move more quickly on certain kinds of business needs, what you're going to do to continually reduce the cost of the non-differentiated activities that you do. It's a clear, relevant, current and relevant IT strategy. You need to have demand management processes that capture operational and tactical as well as strategic demand. We often hear from organizations where they're good at at capturing and tracking the money that goes to big projects, but so much of the rest of it is in separate silos, and they can't honestly say where the whole IT spending goes or the whole budget goes. And so businesses look at it as, I'm getting a small amount of value for a large amount of spend because they don't know where the other parts are going. You've got to be able to capture both so that you can track them. Effective IT governance, building on these plans. Your governance has really got to be oriented, or your IT governance, which is really business governance of IT, has to be oriented towards these are the things we said we were going to do. Are we making progress on them, and are they still the right things to do? And I think Tim basically alluded to this. All these things are hard if you are dealing with lots of scattered inputs and outputs, all different formats, different levels of currency. You need a single place to manage this information and a single workflow that takes the business plans, the IT capacity, the ongoing IT commitments, and brings them all together and then uses them to construct an operating plan and a strategic plan that makes sense. And that kind of gets into a little bit the planning tool foundation. This is a model I'm going to talk about, which is actually going to be part of some research we'll be publishing over the next couple of months on the planning tool market. But you have a foundation. You have a planning tools with a planning database that contain your business strategy, contain your current capacity, capability, and costs, and contain your demand, and bring all those things together into one database so that you can start seeing how they impact on each other. And they have the ability then from there to support planning iterations and to give you those reports that you need to be able to base it on communications, to base it on your governance and steering committee processes, and making those big decisions over, where do we want to invest, where do we want to spend, and what value do we want to try to achieve from that. That's all the planning part. But of course, plans aren't any good without action, just like action isn't really any good without a good plan. You've got to have the other part too. For most organizations, the most important output of the planning process is the thing that goes into the project portfolio management database. These are the projects we're going to do, IT and business projects. These are the reports we can get on. These are the things that we can start to track on these things. Status and progress on the projects and initiatives. Again, being able to feedback. And the planning tool also feeding into your budgeting systems, your time and resource tracking tools, and your purchasing systems. So the plan drives every aspect of IT. And it all comes because you have this good foundation of that planning database with the right inputs and outputs, and then those interfaces into those other necessary tools. So some recommendations to leave you with. And the first recommendation is, again, plan your process and your information flow. Don't address planning as an ad hoc activity that you reinvent every year, depending on the guidance from finance, which is unfortunately too often the case. Define your process and your information flow, addressing the roles of business in your process, of architecture in your process, of your own planning functions that deal with your current capacity and budget, and with the application areas, since that's where the business and IT really meet, is over those applications. Define the process and the information flow. Expect to plan iteratively and holistically, incorporating all aspects of business demand and IT supply. As we've talked about it, those business strategic requests contend for resources with all the other requests that are coming into IT. And if you can, you need to be able to bring all those in a holistic manner, be able to compare them, be able to make it clear what you're spending in each area, and plan iteratively. Not just iteratively from the perspective of the word comes down to cut the budget, but to plan iteratively from the perspective of what's the most optimal mix that we can propose to the business for spending this. Connect your plans to IT governance, and I've mentioned this earlier, but connect them using questions like, are we tracking the plan? And is this still the right plan for us? When you have your business and IT steering committee, these are the things that should be on the table for them. These are the things that give your steering committee a purpose and a function, and it makes it so it's easier to sustain business involvement with it. With focusing on what's the plan, are we tracking to it, and is it still the right plan for us? And what I would suggest is, and this is, the norm nowadays is you plan for a year. The mode that we believe you really need to go into is sort of a continuous planning model. And it's to really maximize business value from IT spend because it starts to pick up opportunities more. And it starts being able to say, conditions have changed. Let's see how we can adjust our plan to be able to seize those opportunities, those conditions. We think that by doing that, you'll be able to address that common business perception of that IT is late and slow by moving into a continuous planning model, being able to identify opportunities and to go after them as quickly as possible. So I want to thank you for your time with this, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Uli Kalix.
Thanks very much, Alex, for this really interesting and enlightening presentation. And I think I'll pick up from your recommendations and would like to embellish on how to define these processes and what they comprise in more detail. Business is looking for IT to help establish unique selling propositions and market differentiation. And at the same time, they keep scrutinizing budgets and timelines, all of which results in requests for change. Requests for change that are applicable to both the current situation as well as the already agreed upon plan. IT is expected to respond quickly, reliably, and timely to these requests for change. And nowadays, IT is all too often not in a situation to do so because of the reasons Alex had highlighted. Lack of integration is one. Diversity of tools supporting the various sub-activities is another one. So what are these questions that IT need to find answers to? Specifically in these economically tight situations, the reaction is all too often, how can we cut costs? So one question would be, how much will I really save by killing or postponing a project? Or how is killing a project impacting business's ability to achieve the strategic goals and objectives? Or what knock-on effects do we have to be aware of, and how are these impacting my ability to deliver on my strategic roadmap and business strategy? Which projects are supporting my critical business initiatives, if any? Or how can I reduce operational budgets by leveraging scaling effects originating from standardization, for instance? And standardization by no means stops at the bounds of IT, but really extends into the way business is enabled or supported through IT. So answering these questions necessitates the existence of a reliable and flexible IT plan. The IT plan is a result of a collaborative process between business and IT. It involves all relevant stakeholders, and on the slide you see a cutout of some of the stakeholders that are typically in discussion here. So it involves all relevant stakeholders from the lines of business and IT. Often the size of the stakeholder community is grossly underestimated. For multinational corporations, it easily goes into hundreds, if not thousands. They come from different functions in the enterprise, and they typically work on different agendas, targets, and remuneration schemes. Their collaborative process is centered around strategy and demand as to provide the general direction. It is centered around enterprise architecture as to provide an understanding of the current situation and the intrinsic dependencies in the business-IT relationship. It focuses on the project portfolio as the plan of action that everyone has agreed upon, and potentially one may want to put into question and scrutiny. And it has to focus on costs and budgets as the economic frame that IT supports. The IT support of the business has to stay within. So IT planning is really a process of concurrently and continuously managing the change along these four dimensions. And in economically difficult times like the current, it is critical to avoid local optima. Local optima that are typical for decision-making in silos. Instead, one really has to strive for a global optimum here. So let's look across the fence and understand what business peers have done to addressing similar challenges. And business has established the notion of ERP as information-based, process-centric, integrated management platform. So what is required is some sort of an ERP for IT. And what IT needs with this ERP for IT is really a platform that is suited to align people, process, and information. A platform that enables a common methodology shared across the different stakeholders, supporting collaboration and decision-making. It needs to be geared to overcome the disintegration that Alex has found typical for many organizations. It needs to clearly associate responsibilities, fostering reliability and traceability of decisions. It needs to enable processes that are fed with accurate and consistent information, which in turn generate information through the decision-making, and such information may then be used to trigger new processes at the back end. And much like the ERP in the business domain, the IT plan needs to be grounded in the operational reality, in the operational information layer. Hence, it is critical to be able to synchronize information with other information systems in the IT, be these systems focused on business architecture, be focused on multi-project management, be focused on operational IT, such as a business service management solution or a configuration data management database, or on application lifecycle management solutions, such as development environments. So ERP for IT also means that these processes can only be successful if the right information is provided in the right format, addressing the needs of the respective stakeholder at the time that critical decisions have to be taken. Important contextual information needs to be directly available. Full context has to be easily explorable. Tedious, mechanic, or standardizable actions and decisions, as well as the flow from one process step to the next, have to be automated wherever possible. I'm now going to go through this in a little more detail, starting off with the IT strategy or the strategy arena. So what are the different planning activities that are key to this IT planning process? Alex had identified the chasm between strategy and operational planning as one major obstacle to a strategy-driven, actionable plan. Strategy operationalization aims at grounding the strategy that is originally defined at this 30,000-foot level that the board of the organization or the central strategy and planning group is focusing on. And it allows bridging that chasm between strategy and operational plan. Strategy operationalization makes project contributions to business strategy transparent. Consequently, strategies can be used as an input to the decision-making process on operational level. So how well am I aligned with my proposal to strategic intentions is going to be an important steer in the decision-making. Equally important, the leadership team can understand whether any of the pivotal strategic objectives are adequately backed by operational initiatives or inadequately backed by operational plans. So they can intervene as and when such situations were to arise. Strategy operationalization itself is a collaborative process between the different strategy and planning groups at corporate level, within the business units, and in the IT organization. And they will be sharing responsibility in different form and fashion as one is refining strategic objectives from the 30,000-foot level down to the level that we want in an actionable plan. At sufficient level of granularity, it links strategic objectives to appropriate dimensions of the business architecture. Where business architecture is critical to accomplishing the strategic objectives. And with business architecture, we are referring to things like business processes, organizations, or business capabilities. So within the business architecture, activities are first focused on the business capabilities. What are the business capabilities that I have today? What is their performance vis-a-vis what are the desired business capabilities in the future? Which capabilities will give me these leading-edge characteristics? And what key performance characteristics do I have to require to gain competitive advantage? Business capability assessment need to incorporate all relevant perspectives, such as sales and production and services or purchasing, to provide for comprehensive understanding. It doesn't suffice to just take the ball from one direction and start running. With these planning activities, we are addressing another of the shortcomings that Alex had outlined. Business capabilities are transparently related to strategy. Furthermore, hotspots for change activities are revealed. Applying some sort of bill of IT information, that is another of these terms with striking similarities to the world of ERP. So applying bill of IT information allows linking to current IT service offerings, allows to further substantiate the action areas that I should be focusing on. The gap analysis for business capabilities in conjunction with this bill of IT information is in turn used to derive IT's own strategic plan. It further on serves to steer project assessment, portfolio decision-making, and so on. Which areas of business need changed or renewed support? Where can support be relaxed? Also, that is important. Where can support requirements be relaxed? Where should support be flexibly changeable, suggesting, for instance, the adoption of a service-oriented architecture approach? And where should it be based on standardized process flows, potentially through a commercial off-the-shelf software such as SAP or Oracle applications? As a result, the attention of everyone in the organization is focused to the areas of highest importance. Now, while we are discussing all these great strategic processes, we shouldn't forget that technology strategy is equally important for IT to stay successful into the future. IT has to make sure that the house is in order. That means it has to conduct SWOT analysis activities as part of its technology strategy process. Understanding the impact of proposed changes early on is an important risk control activity. It can reveal conflicts or overlaps in the different activities that I'm about to embark on. It contributes to an improvement in predictability and reliability in the overall IT plan. Gaining an understanding about potential knock-on effects also assures that all relevant stakeholders are part of the discussion, part of the assessment, and part of the decision-making process. So we are stopping to alienate important stakeholders in this process. And their contribution can be triggered automatically, and the timeliness of their contribution can be safeguarded by the process engine that we are putting in place. Analyzing for cost inefficiencies, architectural risks, non-compliance, or the general health status of the elements or subsections of architecture landscapes are key in the technology strategy process. In fact, if any of these elements was to move into a state of concern, this need to automatically trigger precautionary or remediation actions assigned to the right responsible individuals in the community. Make the engine identify the person who has to fix the problem. The same assessment approaches and metrics should be applied to the current state architecture as well as any of the proposed future states. Alex was referring to the analysis and assessment of alternatives. Have we validated the alternatives? This is an important element at this junction. And again, this would be comparable to inventory management strategies that have been adopted in the ERP world of our business peers. Managing the technology portfolio, setting and effectively enforcing technology standards, as well as continuously planning and coordinating a large number of technology roadmaps is another element of the technology strategy process. So one type of results of this process are alignment plans and waiver processes for IT services using such technologies, where those planning or waiver processes are triggered from the change in technology roadmap decisions automatically. So it doesn't need digging into who all is using this specific piece of technology, say a database technology or an application server technology or whatever. Another type of results are alignment plans between the roadmaps from the vendor providing such technology and the roadmaps that the enterprise or its constituencies are using internally. So we are not taken by surprise if a vendor was to decommit certain technologies on their roadmap. And the third type of results are the demands that I'm creating for strategic technology changes, which have to be consolidated with all the other demands that are derived from strategy operationalization, demands that are implied from business capability analysis, demands that are coming out of operational use of IT capabilities through the business, and so on. So all this, and with this I'm turning over to the third level of planning processes that is to be considered here. With this, we are resulting in a holistic perspective on all the demands received, which was one of the key takeaways from Alex's discussion. The association of such demands with the elements of the enterprise architecture provides for demand consolidation, redundancy analysis, conflict analysis, as well as refinement processes, allowing a high degree of automation. It also allows for the responsible individuals to be proactively informed about the requested change and be invited to contribute to viability assessment or prioritization or even the solution design processes. So, for instance, an application responsible can align his own release plan with the change requests from business users, the changes mandated by regulatories, the technology changes derived from the roadmaps, decisions, and the requirements posed from, say, integration discussions. This, again, has striking similarities to ERP approaches that business peers have adopted for areas such as purchase requisition management, where they are consolidating before they are sending out the purchase requisition to the supplier or bidding it out to a bunch of suppliers. Talking about automation, introducing appropriately automated processes based on workflows provides for improvements in agility, transparency, reliability, and traceability. These workflows include automated decision-making based on business rules, allowing for the necessary flexibility for the individual enterprise to, say, align with federated decision-making rules or to allow fast tracking and exception handling. It also lays the foundation for continuous process improvement actions. Continuous process improvement actions that are based on valuable process performance measures, such as, say, total duration of a workflow, execution time per step, or variation of execution time that obviously can be collected automatically. And continuous process improvement, many of us will know this, is another of these lessons that IT can take from its business peers, which have been busy in these business improvement activities for at least the last 10 years. Planning activities converge in project portfolio and investment decisions. Establishing and controlling the planning processes end-to-end provides for alignment of the investments with strategy. So throughout the whole process, we've never forgotten about the strategy that originally triggered, say, a demand, which is being subsumed in a project proposal that is being proposed in the portfolio process, and it's to be decided about right now. Definition and automation of such processes permits for timely and reliable response to requests for change, meaning IT is no longer the lazy person in the game. IT is in a position to timely respond to the business peers and their change requests. And it doesn't matter which direction these demands originated from and whether they constitute an original change or a change to a previously agreed upon plan. So these processes, all in all, assure transparency and traceability of decisions. Now, many will ask, how about getting started on this? How can I possibly swallow this elephant? And the good part here is you don't really need to swallow it in one chunk. You can start where the pain is most acute. Almost any of the current pain points and top priority initiatives in the enterprise's IT will benefit from introducing such an IT planning process as outlined. There's no need to start with a big bang approach here. Instead, you can start in the context of a key initiative like business strategy alignment or application consolidation to provide for a controlled introduction and a grow-as-you-go approach. This allows for the organization to get acquainted with the IT planning process, as well as incrementally delivering business value and reaching higher maturity levels while doing so. So wrapping up the discussion on my end, I want to go back to Alex's presentations and see how his recommendations are covered with the planning IT approach. We have seen how processes and information flows are clearly outlined and that the different roles know how and when to contribute. Plans are created iteratively and holistically. They are ranging from demand to supply, aligning the business objectives with technology considerations. IT planning and IT governance are joined at the hip, making sure that rules are enforced and progress towards the objectives is tracked. And plans are created and managed in a continuous model, constantly delivering incremental business value, which provides for flexibility to change the plan as and when it was required. For instance, in a situation of change in the economic environment. So with this, I want to conclude my part here, just giving a brief introductory into Alphabet as a company. Our core competence really is IT business management, and we've been doing this for more than 10 years, absorbing a lot of experience in best practice IT management and IT planning processes. We are a rapidly growing vendor of enterprise software solutions for business IT management, operating in the U.S., throughout Europe and Asia Pacific. Our customers are typically IT organizations of large and mid-sized enterprises. So we are referring to the globally leading 2,000 corporations. And our international community of users is rapidly growing, currently at approximately 20,000 users. At this point, I'd like to turn to some of the questions that the audience has raised during the discussion, and I'll hand it over to Anna, who will be going through the questions.
Thank you, Uli, and thank you, Alex. We have a very large audience, an inquisitive audience online today, so we'll do our best to get through as many of the questions posted in the time left. The first question here goes to Alex. Alex, you talked about defined roles as being necessary for IT planning. Who in the organization is involved in IT planning?
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, whoever submitted that question. That's a very good question. What we have found, I'm going to give you an answer from survey data, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. What we found from survey data is about 60% of CIOs of enterprise-scale IT, so this will be people who have enough budget for like 250 people, staff in their organization, things like that. They typically have some organization or function that's designated as you're in charge of planning. And this is from survey data. And I say it typically, about 65% of IT organizations surveyed say we have a designated function for IT planning. Where that resides most often is in your program office, your PMO, and this is the group that does project portfolio management. So they do planning as part of it. There's people who should be involved in this thing, the application areas, enterprise architecture, the people involved with service management and service desk stuff. The data on that is a lot less conclusive. We find it seems that like enterprise architecture is kind of involved, but in more of a niche kind of capacity, with one of the big opportunities seen by them and even seen by CIOs is to get them more central to the planning process. Similarly with service management, they're asked to participate from a cost perspective, but not necessarily from a service level perspective. So our view, the right answer is a dedicated function that is designated so that you can get good at it, that actively involves enterprise architecture, service management, application areas, as well as the business, and gets it up front involved. So it does not start off as a financial activity, but in fact starts off as a strategic activity. That's basically what we would say. Okay,
thank you, Alex. Let's go straight to the second question. It's also to you, Alex. You mentioned the necessity of an integrated tool to manage the planning information. We use PPM, which I guess Program Portfolio Management or Project Portfolio Management, for our planning. Isn't that enough?
Well, it's the P in PPM stands for one or the other of those. So that was a good guess on your part. The problem is, and I kind of alluded to it in the slides here, is that PPM is not a great planning tool. It's essential for tracking the commitments you've made, sequencing projects, making sure that you're optimally using your resources. The problem is it doesn't include all the demand that is using those resources. It doesn't include the maintenance activities and the small enhancement, the operational ones. Because it primarily deals with projects. And it doesn't necessarily have that ability to plan from the business strategy. What you can do with PPM tools is link a project and say it's in support of a business strategy, but you don't have that top-down, start off with a strategy and then say what are the projects that support, what are the projects that need to be done to support it. So what we would say is it's an incomplete planning tool because it doesn't really allow you to see the whole demand. It doesn't allow you to start off with strategy and start off with business capabilities. It's really focused around projects and complex projects in the form of programs.
I want to make an addendum here. I think there is another element that is very important, and that is it is close to impossible in a PPM solution to get an understanding of the deliverables of these projects, be it deliverables in the sense of business capabilities that I'm delivering, or in the sense of IT architecture that I need to put in place in order for this business capability to come true. Leave alone assessing different alternative scenarios, say, I could do this with SAP CRM, I could also do it with Oracle's Siebel CRM suite, and which capabilities would I be getting doing the one vis-a-vis doing the other one, and what is the downstream impact of me opting for the one versus the other. And by the way, we also have an in-house CRM system. How about if we were to enhance this a little bit? All these things are currently being handled outside the PPM system discussions, and they have to be fudged in gazillions of Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and PowerPoint presentations. And at the end of the day, nobody really knows which version of that Excel was the one that we ultimately used to deciding about going for one versus the other solution. So the blindsidedness of architecture in the whole PPM process in traditional PPM solutions is a important obstacle or limitation to using PPM as true business IT focused IT planning solution.
Thank you, Uli. I think we have time for perhaps maybe one or two more questions. The next one is to Alphabet. So you, Uli, our organization hesitates to embark on a planning program because it's seen as too much of an effort to get it off the ground. Do you have any recommendations here?
Yeah, I think the recommendation that we typically see transpire from our customer engagements is starting small, starting focused, identifying an area of concern with high visibility to both business as well as IT, focusing on just this one aspect, identifying what information, which processes, which stakeholders do I need to bring to the table for this challenge to be solved successfully. And then once this is up and running, once this is producing this quick win situations that provides visibility that can be used as a flag that can be carried to the business peers, you look out for other opportunities. And there will be plenty of those. And it's a continuous process of stepping up the ladder, adding capabilities as you go.
A follow-on question to that. In your experience with customers, how long does it take to get it off the ground?
The initial release is typically pretty fast. So we see customers getting off the ground, getting productive in as little as 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 3 months, provided we have the right focus. And we will be doing our best to help the customer identify the right focus and make sure that the customer can deliver to his organization in less than this 3 months' time.
Okay, I think we'll take one final question to Alex. What are the benefits you've seen at Forrester clients who have implemented a planning process?
If you can repeat the question, there was something got in there for a second. I couldn't quite hear.
Sure. What are the benefits that you've seen at your clients, so at Forrester clients, that have implemented a planning process?
Benefits. Well, the benefits range. There's a very big range there. What I would say is the most compelling benefit is that when organizations get good at planning the process, one of the things that happens is that CIOs and IT executive management spend less time running IT and a lot more time working with their business partners. Forrester talks about 3 archetypes of IT that range from what we call the solid utility, who's basically there to run IT and keep costs low and things like that, up to the partner player. And the partner player is the one where truly, business recognizes the strategic value of technology and the IT organization's ability to help them be successful. And when organizations are good at planning, that's the thing that allows the CIO and IT management and executive management to in fact become that partner player organization. If they don't have it, they're too often in reactive mode, explaining why it is the things are happening they are, why the spend is that way, why the projects are late.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I think we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. Uli, would you like to say a few closing words?
Again, thanks everyone for joining us this morning, this afternoon, depending on which time zone you are in. I really appreciated having this conversation with you this afternoon. We have recorded the webinar today, and it will be available on our website, www.alphabet.com, in a few days' time. Again, thanks everyone for joining. Specific thanks go out to Alex and Tim for their contribution today, and talk to you soon again.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's webinar. You may disconnect your lines at this time. Thank you all for your participation.